the hell off my planet.
This review is brought to you by the National Campaign Against Drunk Driving. Well, after many, many years in development and more changes than I can count, the Bureau XCOM Declassified is finally here. This game has faced its share of criticism since it was first revealed back in 2010. Back then it was a first-person shooter, now it is a third-person shooter, but again, this changes pretty much everything that people know and love about the XCOM series. So, how does the final product fare? Let's find out.
So, what is the Bureau anyway?
Bureau of Operations and Command.
Never heard of it.
You were never meant to.
It's notoriously difficult creating games that try to reinvent beloved franchises. Sometimes it works out, but more often than not, it just proves how much better the original formula actually was. The Bureau XCOM Declassified is the latest attempt at this, and sadly, one of the more egregious examples, as it almost completely abandons the core elements of the XCOM series and replaces them with subpar shooting mechanics and a narrative drenched in mediocrity.
Welcome to XCOM.
The Bureau takes place after an alien race has invaded the United States for reasons yet unknown. You play as William Carter, a devastatingly handsome federal agent who's been tasked with suppressing the invasion while struggling with the demons of his past. Despite the contrived attempt at a plot, the story lacks any distinct or unique qualities, something it clearly recognizes and attempts to camouflage, using tired tropes and conversation trees that feel pointless and out of place. Once the story does begin to unfold, near the end of the game, it drags on for so long and in such a confusing and over-the-top manner that you'll wish it had ended 2 hours earlier.
Some of the things I saw, it was just like out of one of the old Captain Thunderclap serials.
For a game that's only around 10 to 12 hours, much of it is an exercise in apathy, although the first few hours are admittedly some of the most promising. The vintage aesthetic is refreshing and well-suited for the 1960s time period, and even the first couple of missions are exciting until you realize just how little the game has to offer beyond them. All missions in the game are assigned through a monitor in the Bureau's headquarters. Upon joining, Carter can recruit a squad of agents with different classes and specialties to bring on missions with him. Only 2 squad mates can accompany on any given mission, while the others are either left behind or sent out on separate squad missions to complete tasks and bring back rewards. There aren't a ton of missions to begin with, maybe 10 or 12 at most, including side quests, but they get more and more repetitive and predictable as the game progresses. The basic formula seems to be land somewhere, shoot a bunch of guys, grab something, shoot some more guys, then head back to HQ. Even the environments, which could have given some variety to the game, are practically indistinguishable from one another. This repetition really wears on you the further you delve into the game, and that's saying nothing of the combat, which is about as generic as it gets for a third-person shooter. Even without the strategy elements, which are few and far between, there are aspects of this game that are simply inexcusable by modern standards. What's the deal with cover systems? No, but seriously, what is the deal with cover systems? Why do so many games still insist on using the same button for sprinting as they use for taking cover? It makes so little sense. I can think of so few instances where that has had good results. 9 times out of 10, you're just going to be doing this over and over and over again. To make matters worse, the button for reloading your weapon is the same one for picking up a weapon, which leads to a lot of unnecessary frustration mid-combat. In between accidentally ducking in and out of cover, Carter can issue commands to his squad mates using a combat wheel. Every time a squad mate levels up, they'll earn new abilities like throwing out a laser turret or calling in a fire mission, or using mind control to brainwash their enemies. Certain skills are significantly more effective than others, but they're all equally as irritating to use. For example, long-range abilities can't just be placed wherever you want on the map. If there are obstacles in the way, you'll need to physically walk around them in order to get to your landing spot. Not only is this awkward, it puts you in a vulnerable spot because the combat wheel only slows time, it doesn't stop it. So enemies can still flank you while you're planning your moves. Carter can also position his squad mates using the move option, but the majority of the time it's useless because they'll disobey you 5 seconds later and run out into direct fire. They're really not very smart for federal agents. It doesn't take much for them to get severely wounded either, and if you or another squad mate can't revive them in time, they're gone forever. Unless, of course, you reload the last checkpoint. It's ironic that one of the few elements they managed to preserve from the original XCOM games, permadeath, achieves its purpose, but for all the wrong reasons. It's not the fear of losing a squad mate that keeps you on your toes, it's the fear of having to go back and replay a level again. And not because it's difficult or time-consuming, it's just that boring. If 2K Marin had focused more on the strategy elements of the game, then this could have been a fairly unique shooter. Unfortunately, it's about as strategic as Mass Effect 3 and nowhere near as fun. The range of enemies is incredibly narrow, and the multitude of poor design decisions just drives home how unpolished the whole affair really is. It fails to keep pace with its own ambitions and instead becomes more wrapped up in doing everything than doing any one thing well. For a shooter, the Bureau XCOM Declassified is substandard. For an XCOM game, it's just insulting. I give it a 2 out of 5. Between August 14th and September 2nd of this year, law enforcement agencies are going to be out in full force patrolling the streets and cracking down on impaired driving. As you might know, Labor Day is coming up, and that is an especially deadly weekend for drunk driving. In 2010, 147 people were killed in crashes involving drivers or motorcycle riders with blood alcohol contents of 0.08 or higher. Like I said, law enforcement agencies are going to be out now and through the rest of the year, so if you've been out drinking, call a taxi, have a friend come pick you up, or just stay put. If you are caught driving while drunk, you will be arrested. No warnings, no excuses. And there you have it. Not the happiest of reviews, but those are my thoughts. I should point out that I was playing on the PS3 debug version of the game. Our producer Zach was playing around with the PC version. Specifically, he was using DirectX 11, and he did note some performance issues there. So if you do want to pick the game up, I recommend either waiting until those get sorted out, or perhaps picking it up on console. The game is out tomorrow for Xbox 360, PS3, and Windows. And as always, if you have comments, leave them down below.